Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? Translation with repetition: O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. An expert physician treats his patient with a therapeutic diet. For example, milk preparations sometimes cause disorder of the bowels, but the very same milk converted into curd and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cures such disorders. Similarly, the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. Such activities have to be spiritualized. Just as by fire iron is made red hot, and thereby the action of fire begins, similarly the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. That is the secret of spiritual success. We should not try to lord it over the material nature, nor should we reject material things. The best way to make the best use of a bad bargain is to use everything in relation with the Supreme Spiritual Being. Everything is an emanation from the Supreme Spirit, and by His inconceivable power, He can convert spirit into matter and matter into spirit. Therefore, a material thing, so-called, is at once turned into a spiritual force by the great will of the Lord. The necessary condition for such a change is to employ so-called matter in the service of the spirit. That is the way to treat our material diseases and elevate ourselves to the spiritual plane where there is no misery, no lamentation, and no fear. When everything is thus employed in the service of the Lord, we can experience that there is nothing except the Supreme Brahman. The Vedic mantra that everything is Brahman is thus realized by us. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we are having this wonderful dialogue between two elevated personalities. Actually, when two elevated souls discuss, there is a lot to receive. There is a lot to receive, things which are of values to us. These are not ordinary conversation which are of importance to us, for us to know, for some gossip or something. These are highly elevated personalities. And they are revealing something which is very, very powerful. So that is why when we come for the morning Bhagavatam class, if we have the understanding of the context, what is going on, what has happened so far, then our eagerness and interest to know will be even more higher. If we reflect on what we have been seeing in this portion of Srimad Bhagavatam, few verses before we saw actually the Bhaktivedantas, they were leaving Narad Muni's home, and just before leaving, they actually imparted the most confidential subject to Narad Muni because they are Bhakta Vatsala, they are Dina Vatsala. because they are very kind to the poor-hearted souls. And of course, we also saw that this they did because Narad Muni had some special qualifications. He was very much attached to those sages. He was gentle in behavior, and all his sins were eradicated in their service. In his heart, he had strong faith in them, and he subjugated the senses and was strictly following them with his body and mind. So these are some of the qualifications required if we want to receive this most confidential knowledge from the Bhakti Vedantas. What happened when he received this knowledge? So Narad Muni is telling, by that confidential knowledge, he could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. Mind you, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself says, Daivi Hesha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya. It's not easy to understand and not easy to overcome. But once one is blessed with that confidential knowledge, one can understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Sri Krishna. And by knowing that, one can return to him and personally meet him. Gachanti Tat Padam. And in the last verse that we had seen, very beautiful verse, Narad Muni told, O Brahmana Vyasadev, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead Shri Krishna. So he is quoting the other learned and the self-realized souls that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yadishware Bhagavati Karma Brahmani Bhavitam. This is the only way if we want to eradicate or stop this tapatraya chikitsatam. The best remedial measure for this is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now today's verse, again a very beautiful verse, and a very important purport by Srila Prabhupada. Let's see what Prabhupada is trying to say in this verse. So the verse is Amayo yascha bhutanam jayate yena subrata tadeva hi amayam dravyam na punati chikitsitam. The word amaya in this verse is used twice. Amayo yascha bhutanam jayate yena subrata tadeva hi amayam dravyam na punati chikitsitam. And if you see the synonyms for this, amaya refers to diseases. So amayo yascha bhutanam, bhutanam refers to all the living entities. So the living entities, when they get some disease, jayate, if anybody gets a disease, amayo yascha bhutanam jayate yena subrata. So subrata is a good soul. This is Vedavyas being addressed by Narada Muni. O Subrata, O good soul, don't you know that Bhutanam Jayate Amayo, Bhutanam, the living entities, get some diseases, and Tadeva hi Amayam Dravyam na punati chikitsitam. The cause of that disease can also be the cure. So the word chikitsitam is again used in this verse, which we saw in the previous verse as well. Tapatraya chikitsitam. Chikitsitam in the last verse was translated by Prabhupada as remedial measures, and here Prabhupada is saying that treated with. So the translation is, O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by the very same thing? There is a technical word used here called therapeutically. Therapy. Therapy is a treatment or a process by which a disease can be remedied. There is a remedy for a disease. So the translation is, O good soul, Subrata, does not a thing, Dravya, applied therapeutically, Chikitsitam, cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? Amayo yascha bhutanam jayate. And we saw the purport of Srila Prabhupada, which is very wonderful. There are many important points in this purport, but I want to highlight in the midst of the purport, there was one sentence, and that says, that is the secret of spiritual success. So how profound this could be. If we know the secret of spiritual success in life, what else we need? All of us, we want to become spiritually successful. We want to become devotees of the Lord so that we can go back home, back to Godhead at the end of our life. We are all aspiring to become ideal disciples of Srila Prabhupada. But what is it that is missing in our life? What is it that we don't know? And in this purport, Prabhupada is saying that is the secret of spiritual success. So let us see what is the purport and why, how this line is coming. Where is it coming? So Prabhupada says an expert physician treats his patient with a therapeutic diet. For example, milk preparation sometimes cause disorder of the bowels, but the very same milk converted into curd and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cures such disorders. I'm sure we all have experienced this in our life. If you have not, you can experience it. Drink a lot of milk or rabdi or whatever it is, and then you'll have some loose motion. If you want to cure that loose motion, then take some curd, right? It works. So similar, the milk is the cause of that dysentery, but a conversion, a product which is produced from the same milk can act as a remedy. But what we need to pay attention in this line which Prabhupada is saying, which we might have missed, I'll read it again. An expert physician treats his patient with therapeutic diet. For example, milk preparation sometimes cause disorder of the bowels, but the very same milk converted into curd, and there is an and. There is something which is also added up there, and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cures such disorders. I want you to think about it, that it is not just the curd, but there is something else also which is getting added up, some remedial ingredients which is curing the disorders. And we will see that. So the next line Prabhupada is saying, similarly. So okay, that example is very simple, but how is it relevant to our real life? Similarly, the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. Often in our life, we try to solve material problems in a materialistic way. If I have this problem, I should go and look for a solution with a hope that that solution is going to cure the problem. But here it is mentioned, the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. If you still don't believe in that, or if you still have faith or conviction or hope that for every material problem there is a material solution, we will see how that is a big myth. First, let's see what Prahlad Maharaj has to speak about this. This is a verse which comes in the 7th canto, and I've just highlighted one line here. Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Yasmat priya priya viyoga samyoga janma sokagnina sakala yonishu dahyamanaha Dukkhau sadham tadapi dukkham atadhiyaham bhuman brahmami badame tava dasya yoga. Yasmat priya priya viyoga samyoga janma sokagnina sakala yonishu dahyamanaha. This is one line, and in that he's telling, actually all of us, sakala yonishu, all of us, when we are put into this material world, when we have accepted different bodies, sometimes we get something favorable, sometimes we get something which is unpleasant, pleasant or unpleasant. Yasmat priya apriya, pleasant and unpleasant. Viyoga samyoga, sometimes we get that and sometimes we get separated from that. Viyoga is separation, samyoga is when we are getting it. Janma sokagnina sakala yonishu dahyamana. So because of this association with favorable and unfavorable things, and because of this, Vyoga and Samyoga, somebody laments. Janma Sokagnina. One laments that Dahyamanaha, oh my God, that was such a pleasing situation. And now I'm not there in that situation. How unpleasant it is. Sokagnina, and there is a fire of lamentation in which Dahyamanaha, one is constantly getting burnt. And then what do? We look for a solution, Ausadham, and we think that Ausadham or that medicine or that remedy is going to take care of that. But Prahlad Maharaj is saying, Dukkha Ausadham tadapi dukkham atadhyaham. So when we take that remedy becomes worse than the disease. Bhuman Brahmami Badame Tavadasya Yogam. So he's telling, oh Lord, Supreme Lord, please tell me, how do I engage in your devotional service? How do I engage in your devotional service to your lotus feet? Because that is the only way we can cure this. O Great One, O Supreme Lord, because of combination with pleasing and displeasing circumstances, and because of separation from them, one is placed in a most regrettable position within heavenly or hellish planets, as if burning in a fire of lamentation. So the cause of lamentation is how do I mute? So the cause of lamentation, as mentioned by Prahlad Maharaj, is that because of combination with the pleasing and displeasing circumstances. Two things. One is which is displeasing circumstances. We don't like something, and because of separation from them, because of separation from the so-called pleasing substance, one is placed in a most regrettable position within heavenly and hellish planets, as if burning in a fire of lamentation. Sokagnina Dahyamanaha. Although there are many remedies by which to get out of miserable life, any such remedies in the material world are more miserable than the miseries themselves. Therefore, I think that the only remedy is to engage in your service. Kindly instruct me in such service. Let's go back to our purport, which we were reading, and it is mentioned that similarly the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. And then Prabhupada highlights, says something. Such activities have to be spiritualized. Just as by fire, iron is made red hot, and thereby the action of fire begins. And this is such an important example. I'm sure we have heard this many times because Prabhupada talks about this. Madhupandit Prabhu talks about this. If you see fire and iron, is there anything common between them? They're completely different, right? Iron is solid, cold, and fire is, you can't even touch it. The flame is, it's difficult to touch. But when that iron is put into the fire, it becomes red hot. I remember many years ago when we were cooking something outside, like a grill. Accidentally, one of the iron rods fell down on the grass and it caught fire. It's as if, you are putting a matchstick. The way it catches fire, the same way the iron acted. The iron, which doesn't have any property of that of fire, acts like a fire. Similarly, when we engage ourselves in Krishna's service, when we completely dovetail our tendencies, we become spiritualized because Krishna is spiritual. Krishna is free from material contaminations. So the secret which Prabhupada is saying here is, such activities have to be spiritualized, just as by fire iron is made red hot, and thereby the action of fire begins. Similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. Mind you, there is a very important word which Prabhupada is using here. Material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. You don't have to renounce material world. You don't have to say, well, my family life is so troublesome, so difficult, and I want to practice my spiritual life but my family is coming in my way, I should renounce and go. No. What Prabhupada is saying, the material conception of a thing is at once changed. We have to get rid of the material conception of our lives. That this is my family, these are my children, this is my wife, this is my husband, because actually they are not. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, he says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante maam buddha bhava samanvitaha. I am the source of everything that is material and spiritual. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. Does that exclude anyone? Does that exclude my family members? Does that exclude my home? Does that exclude my possessions? No. But because of our false ego, because of our false understanding, we think these are all mine. I am the owner of all these things. So Prabhupada is saying, similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. If we know that anything that I possess, actually the real owner or the real possessor of that is the Lord, and the Lord comes first. So if Krishna comes first, then all my family members should be, should be inspired to be engaged in Krishna's service. Everything is Krishna. So the fear in our mind also goes away. Because it is mine, I think I have to protect. I don't know the distant future, what it is going to be. So I should just do something about it because I'm thinking these are mine. We don't think about other things in life that these are to be protected, these are to be preserved or something like that. But for our own things, whatever is so-called our things, we say that we have to take care of them. But here Prabhupada is saying, similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. That is the secret of spiritual success. So the materialistic conception of life, which is very deep rooted within our mind, within our consciousness, where we think this is me and this is mine, this is me and this is mine, has to be changed. We have to understand that everything belongs to the Lord. Janmadasya yata anvayad itaratas charteshu abhigya swarat. Everything emanates from the Lord. And when we know that, Prabhupada gives the example that of a mic, which looks material, when it is used in Krishna's service, it becomes spiritual. This laptop, this table, everything is matter. But this matter can be used in Krishna's service, and when that happens, it becomes spiritual. Then Prabhupada says there are two things to be avoided. We should not try to lord it over the material nature, nor should we reject material things. And this is another big problem in our life. Big problem is we want to possessiveness. These are all my things. Somehow I should take care of them. I should keep it in some place, preserve it. My children, my house, my car, my wife, my husband, my father. These are all possessiveness. But the real owner of all these things is Krishna, as I mentioned. Very interestingly, there is one verse which Rupa Goswami quotes and Prabhupada quotes that very often. Talks about this word possessiveness and how one can get rid of it. Anasaktasya vishayan yatharam upayunjataha nirvandha krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. Prapanchikatya buddhya hari sambandhi vastunaha mumukshubhi parityago vairagyam palgukatyate. Anasaktasya vishayan yatharam upayunjataha nirvandha krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchyate. Read the translation very nicely. Prabhupada says, when one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. So this mamatva, mine, one can transcend that state, which is not easy. Every one of us, we have got some possessiveness, the idea of possessiveness inside us. This is mine, this work is mine, this is my company, this is my job, this is my life. All that possessiveness is there. But Prabhupada is saying when one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna. There's a classic example which we all know. There was one Mayavada sannyasi. When he was offered some money, he said, "Oh, this is Maya. I don't want it." But when the same thing was asked to Prabhupada, he said, his eyes became big and said, "How much how much wealth you have. Koto. Because everything you can give, we can use it in Krishna's service. The best way, the main purpose of using Lakshmi is in the service of Narayana. The more we try to possess, the more we try to have it for our own sense gratification, for our own sake, the more we become miserable in this material world. When one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. On the other hand, one who rejects everything without knowledge of its relationship to Krishna is not as complete in his renunciation. Sometimes people renounce artificially. Think that these are all Maya, these are all Mithya, these are all false. But if they don't have the right knowledge that in relationship to Krishna, this is not a complete renunciation. This is Falgu Vairagya. Now, we saw these two things which Prabhupada is saying that has to be avoided. We should not try to lord it over the material nature, nor should we reject material things. Very interestingly, in the purport, there is one sentence where Prabhupada is writing something in the bracket. Right? Therefore, a material thing, in brackets so-called, is at once turned into a spiritual force by the great will of the Lord. Actually, there is nothing material in this world. When the material thing, when anything which is used in Krishna's service, it is spiritual. Prabhupada gives the example of the mic or the microphone, which can be used in Krishna's service and become spiritual. And he was giving the example in the case of Arjuna. In the beginning of the war, Arjuna was not attached, Arjuna was not inclined to fight. He wanted to renounce. But as per Krishna's instruction, he fought. And when he fought, that became spiritual. So there is a verse in Bhagavad Gita, in the 4th chapter, we had seen this. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmagno Brahmana Hutam, Brahmeva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. The word Brahma is used there many times, but we need to understand this. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, Brahmagno Brahmana Hutam, Brahmeva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhina. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Very tough to understand the language, but it's probably one verse. But Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir. Whatever arpanam, whatever we are contributing, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir. Brahmahavir is the butter, the ingredients. It is actually compared to a sacrifice. So you are offering something in the sacrifice, like the wooden stick, the butter, or whatever, the yajna pongal, you are offering that. Brahmagno, and there is a fire which is being lit up. Brahmagno, Brahmana Hutam, a person who is performing the sacrifice. All these things can become spiritual if it is performed for Brahma Karma Samadhina. If it is performed for the consummation of that supreme absolute, Brahma Karma Samadhina, then it becomes absolute. So similarly, any material thing, when we use it in Krishna's service, it becomes spiritual. Any material thing, when we are using it for our own sense gratification, it becomes binding. What we need to understand, which is very important, and which Prabhupada is telling, that the best way to make the best use of a bad bargain is to use everything in relation with the supreme spiritual thing. Actually, when we act, or when we do any action, what we don't realize is that there is a reaction which is coming. And if there is no way that reaction can be nullified by another action, because that action will have another reaction. The only way we can counter this is if we engage in devotional service of the Lord, where there is no reactions. That is why Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is telling, Yajnarthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Yajnarthat, do work for the pleasure of Vishnu. Otherwise, work is binding in this material world. Every action is binding. So if that is the case, if you see this particular line, therefore a material thing, so-called, is at once turned into a spiritual force by that great will of the Lord. So Krishna, when he instructed Arjuna, Arjuna's action became spiritual. How do we make our life, how do we make our action spiritual? Krishna is not present. Well, Krishna's representative is present. The pure devotee spiritual master's instructions have to be followed. Many times we see that people actually understand very theoretically the knowledge which is given, but when it comes to practically applying, they struggle a lot. One may even give good classes, good lectures, can talk, because the philosophy is very easy. It is not so difficult. You are not the body or spirit soul. Saying that is very simple. But to apply that in our lives, there is a culture of knowledge which is required. A few days back, Chanchalpati Prabhu in his class, he was referring to this, and there is a devotee. There is a person who was telling, I'm a devotee, I'm practicing Krishna consciousness for 17 years. Well, you may know the theory, you may know the philosophy theoretically, but to practice that, to apply that, you need specific instructions. There is a culture. There is a culture which is set up by Prabhupada to understand and apply that in our lives. We can't go and do things the way we want and at the same time expect that we will realize this knowledge. It will not go. It has to be understood in a proper manner. There is a certain etiquette that is required. There is a certain culture which is necessary, and that comes when somebody associates with devotees, understands that there is a system which is set up by Prabhupada. There are certain things which are very deep rooted within us. These are stuffed, very stuffed within us, like a stuffed toy. The moment you do something, it will start showing its true colors. Like that, the modes of passion, ignorance, these are very deeply rooted. So we react. All of a sudden, we start reacting without realizing whether the action that we are performing, is it going to hamper my actions or not? Is it going to hamper my spiritual life or not? We don't realize that. We do that because we don't have that culture of knowledge. So that is why in Krishna, when he says, or the 6 principles of surrender, where it is mentioned, Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. Do things which are favorable for your devotion. This is the first principle. Maybe, the way of my talking, the way of my speaking, or the way of my behavior is, who knows if it is offending the Vaishnavas, if it is offending the spiritual master, if it is something which is counterproductive, let me not do it. But my instinct may say, no, I should prove my point, I should tell it. No, that is not the culture. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. There is a reason, there is a system which is established by Prabhupada, because this kind of tendencies within our heart, they manifest when we start practicing this devotional life. This anarthas start coming. So if somebody is unaware, somebody is not sure the value of a full-time devotee, a devotee who has dedicated his life, it's a big sacrifice. It's not a small thing. Somebody who gets initiated, he gets a name as some Dasa or Dasi, and then he starts thinking, what is the difference? Anyway, these are also devotees. I am also initiated. I am also the same thing. No, for a devotee who has dedicated his life, he has crossed that step where he has come to this conclusion, come what may. Maybe he may not be fully convinced, this thing, behavior may not be, he is not purified, that's fine. But he has come to this conclusion by surrendering to Krishna, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Dajam Tvam Sarva Papebhyam Mukshesami Ma Sucha. He has crossed that stage. He has come to that understanding that come what may, Krishna is going to take care of me. That's a very big step. So when we are in our day-to-day dealings, when we are addressing, when we are talking, when we are interacting with devotees, that thing should always remain in our mind. It should be there in the back of. Otherwise, it's very easy to find faults and commit offenses. And before we realize, the taste for bhakti is gone and we are also away from this devotional life. Very easy. Not very difficult. So that is why the culture of knowledge, which Prabhupada says of time and again, has to be understood, has to be realized. And we have to understand these principles little more deeply. So when Prabhupada is saying, therefore, a material thing is at once turned into spiritual force by the great will of the Lord. I want to give you a few examples of when Prabhupada was physically, when he was here. For example, when Prabhupada was actually he was very sharp at spotting some talents that people had. So there was one devotee who came in the initial days by name Hayagriva, who was an English professor. And Hayagriva Prabhu, when Prabhupada saw him, he saw that, oh, this person has got good English knowledge. So he immediately gave him the service of, reading the transcripts and seeing if there is any correction and typing it. So Haigrava Prabhu was very happy because that was his strong point, and that is how he got engaged in devotional service. And he started doing this correction of the manuscript, which is written by Prabhupada, which was typed by Prabhupada in one finger, and he was doing it properly. And once the service was done, Haigrava Prabhu comes to Srila Prabhupada and says, well, thank you, Prabhupada, for giving me this service. It was very nice kind of you. Is there any other service that I can do? Just for the sake of, because you can't just go just like that after finishing the work. So he wanted to be nice to Prabhupada, and he said, so Prabhupada said, yes, I have got some more manuscripts. So he goes and opens the cupboard and brings one bunch of this thing which is tied in a saffron cloth, and removes a huge pile of transcripts which has to be corrected. So actually Haigrava Prabhu was not expecting that. He thought the job is done just for the sake of saying. He was telling Prabhupada, so nice of you that you gave me the service. And looking at that, he's saying, so Prabhupada, this looks like a service of a lifetime. Prabhupada said, not just lifetime, many, many lifetimes. So a devotee recalls that actually what Prabhupada meant by that is, Janme Janme Prabhu say. Eternally, he is our spiritual master. Once we learn to engage in devotional service of his, no matter what our past life is, it will all get transformed. But we need to have that mood of being engaged in Krishna's service, that mood of receiving the instructions of spiritual master through whatever system that is, and follow that. The big challenge comes when our false ego comes into play. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. We think we can do better. We know more than anybody else. Why should I listen? There lies the problem. There again the material concept of life comes into picture, and it spoils. Prabhupada often gives this example of a thief who went to pilgrimage. You know that? So a thief goes to a pilgrimage, and that night he sleeps. And since he's a thief, but somehow he got some inspiration to go to the pilgrimage, he goes there and he sleeps with other saintly people, other devotees. In the night, he had that itching to steal. So he got up and he said, I don't know, my job is nighttime, I have to do this work, what to do. So he got up. And then he's saying, he's knowing, because he's come in touch with the devotees, the association of devotees, it has acted on him. So he's thinking, I should not be doing this. This is not good. But he could not control. So he got up and then he took out some things from some person's bag, put it in another person's bag, and something he took it from another person's bag and put it in another one. So like that he did, and he slept off. So when morning happened, all hell break loose. Somebody is seeing somebody's towel somewhere, somebody's soap here, what's going on? And then they saw he's sleeping peacefully, they woke him up, that fellow. So then he got up and he acknowledged, please forgive me, actually I'm a thief. I have all these bad habits, it just came out, I could not resist and I have done this. The moment somebody says like that, people forget. Somebody acknowledges his fault. Like that, we have also many bad tendencies. We have all these anarthas which are deep rooted within our heart, and they manifest. They manifest when one engages in devotional service. When he came in touch with the association of devotees, this all came up. But he knows that this is not right. The right thing at that point in time is to acknowledge the fault, acknowledge the mistake, ask for forgiveness if somebody has done something wrong, and move on in life. Otherwise, carrying that grudge, carrying all those things, spiritual life, forget about spiritual life, even material life also becomes troublesome. I know there is another story of a devotee who was sharing a similar incident during book marathon time. Now it will start sometime in Los Angeles. So in Los Angeles, when this book marathon used to happen, the devotees used to go firing all cylinders. They'll spend extra time in subways and shopping malls and in different places they used to go, and they used to just, with one pointed attention, they used to go and just work hard for Prabhupada's book marathon. So there was one devotee who was very competitive in his mind, very, very competitive. And they knew that, the person who comes first, who does the maximum, will be recognized by Prabhupada, will get some award or something. So what he did was, once when the Guru Puja was going on, He thought, before the devotees leave, let me leave early, so that I can spend some extra time and do some more book distribution. So far, so good. The devotees are doing Guru Puja and all. He left. Silently, he left. And then he knew that after that, the devotees are going to honor prasadam. So that will take some more time. So he went out and he saw that, the shoes were there in that place. He interchanged the shoes, like the thief did. He put this shoes there, somebody's shoes in this, somebody's shoes in another place. And he was not satisfied with that. What he did was he tied the lace of two different shoes together very strongly. And then he left. So these devotees, pleasantly they went after Guru Puja, they are honoring prasadam. They came and they found, first of all, the shoes are not there in the same place. Where is mine? Where is yours? And they're searching, and then it is really tightly, it is done. It took some time for them to remove that and then go for book distribution. In that, whatever time he gained. Of course, what I'm trying to say is these are all the tendencies, these are all the proclivities, these are all the anarthas which are deep rooted within us, which manifest, which come out. But the only way, doesn't matter what it is, if we continue to remain engaged in devotional service of the Lord, if we understand this is the only thing in life, there is nothing for me, there is nothing which belongs to me, then the life starts transforming. As Narada Muni says in the verse earlier that we were seeing, because this chapter is so instructive, so wonderful. Tasyaiva heta payate to kovido, nalabhyate yat brahmatam upariyadaha, talabhyate dukkavad anyatra sukham, kalena sarvatra gavhira ramhasa. Tasyaiva heta prayate to kovido. Only for that purposeful end one should work. What is that purposeful end? To be engaged in devotional service of the Lord. Tasyaiva heta prayate to kovido, nalabhyate yat brahmatam upariyadaha. Doesn't matter whether I can, elevate my material position or not, because even if I do that, the miseries are still going to come. Like the happiness is coming, like we are trying for happiness, we are working hard for that. But what Prabhupada or the verse is saying that like the miseries are coming on their own way, similarly happiness is also going to come. Don't work hard for that. That is available even in the lower species of life. Even if you go up to Brahmaloka, that is also available, the sense gratification, the pleasure from that. Work for that purposeful end, which is only achievable in this human form of life, to remain engaged in devotion. That is the only way we can experience the true bliss that we are looking for, the true satisfaction. Otherwise, the action that we are doing, it is going to bind us, and that binding, whatever we're trying to counteract is only going to act adversely for us, for our lives. To conclude this, the purport from this verse that we were seeing. So Prabhupada in the last but 2 lines, he is telling that is the way to treat our material disease and elevate ourselves to the spiritual plane, where there is no misery, no lamentation, and no fear. When everything is thus employed in the services of the Lord, we can experience that there is nothing except the Supreme Brahman. What is that? Sarvatra Khalu Sarvatra Brahman. That Vedic. Khalu Sarvamidam Brahman. Whatever the words. The Vedic mantra that everything is Brahman is thus realized by us. Imagine what nice state of mind it will be when we get up in the morning. We realize that everything is Krishna's. Everything. There is nothing which is mine, including my own body. But this body still needs to be preserved, to be engaged in devotional service. But even everything, every single thing, not easy, but that's what he's telling. When everything is thus employed in the service of the Lord, we can experience that there is nothing except the Supreme Brahman. The Vedic mantra that everything is Brahman is thus realized by us. I had a PPT recently when we were doing the chapter summary for 3rd chapter. I just want to share this with you. This is all from 3rd chapter. If you see the verses, this comes. One of the first things that we need to understand is inaction is not a choice. There is no way that one can say, I will remain inactive, I'll not act. No, because soul is always active. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Nahi kashchit kshanam api jata tishtati akarmakrit. Not even a single moment we can remain without acting. Okay. So if that is the case, so when the soul is always active, another thing which the chapter says is we are always conditioned by the 3 modes. The 3 modes are stuck inside, deep within. It's like that stuffed toy. So the chavi is given. The moment you lose it, it starts showing its conditioned by three modes. So it is forced to act. So if that is the case, then what happens? If somebody is trying to renounce, artificially saying that I don't want it, I just want to be renunciant. But Krishna is telling pretender because we still have the desire to enjoy those things, which is deep rooted, because we don't know that that particular thing can be used in Krishna's service. It is a premature renunciation. We have not understood the real concept, yet we are renouncing, thinking that this is not good for me. He is called a pretender. Mithyachara sauchyate. And by doing this kind of action, we cannot be free from reaction as well. And there is no perfection. So why take this path? Take the path which Krishna is telling, which is the path of Karma Yoga, which is the path of purification. Work done as sacrifice to Vishnu. Yagyarthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. Tadartham karma kauntaya mukta sangha samachara. Which is free from reaction and it liberates us. It makes us go back to our constitutional position to remain always fixed in devotional service. So these are some of the important points from this verse. Anybody has any question or comment? Yes. What if our mind is so crowded that there are nice for any alternative? So that is why in the Sangha of devotees, when you are told not to do some things, actually the other devotees are like mirror to us. So when in an association of devotees, somebody is not anybody who's your authority, who's telling you not to do certain things, one should listen. One should have the humility, or one should have the understanding that life is a continuous learning process and I'm ready to correct myself. Otherwise, on our own, we'll not be able to know even our thirst. Tough. But it's very easy for someone else to see. That's why the class yesterday, Chanchalpati Prabhu was saying that culture of knowledge is a very important thing. Sometimes when we are outside, we lack that privilege of being in association of devotees always. So it becomes a theoretical concept. Not the body, I'm spirit, so I know that. And I can talk about it also, quote verses also. But to realize that, you need to follow the attitude of independence has to go. The more it goes, the more one becomes advanced. The beginning of our spiritual life is surrender to the Guru, surrender to spiritual master. Without that, the spiritual life is not there. See, outside material world, we want to be the Lord of all that we survey, the Lord of material nature. That is being independent and trying to control everything. Here it is exactly opposite. But the challenge is we carry those materialistic concepts here also. So accepting, receiving, it becomes difficult. But the solution is to be obedient to spiritual master and learn that, because that's the way we'll progress. The more people think they can live independently, they have now got the knowledge, there is no need of any institution, there is no need of any consultation or association or anything of that sort, the more they are in precarious position. One is, one may think I'm doing all right. The second thing is, one may see that, what is the need? What is the big deal? Either way, it is problematic. Any other question? Yes. Can be cured, no? So it's basically the import of this is the activities that we are doing, if those same activities we use it in Krishna's service, the intention or the purpose behind doing that activity is pleasing Krishna, then it will cure us from the material disease. But as long as we are thinking these activities are all meant for my sense gratification, for my pleasure, that will create the disease, the milk kind of a disease. Oh, good. So I had highlighted that, I forgot. So that's it. Okay. Can you tell me that, if I say that, okay, I want to dovetail things for Krishna's service, but still I'm not able to do. So then what else is required? What can be done? I'm trying, but still I'm seeing that the material concepts of life are not going, or the anarthas in my life are not going. What else can be done? What do you think? That's a very good point that you brought, Mataji. Actually, that is certainly. But the very same milk converted into curd and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cure such disorders. Actually, it is not just using the matter in Krishna's service. In the previous verse purport, if you see, there is a line which Prabhupada says. Our attempt has to be, there is a mercy and an attempt word which is there. You should know for certain. Where is it? Yeah, the whole world is struggling very hard to exist out of these miseries, but men do not know that without the sanction of the Lord, no plan or no remedial measures can actually bring about the desired peace and tranquility. No, is that there or no? The remedial measure to cure a patient by medical treatment is useless if it is not sanctioned by the Lord. No, this is not there. We should know for certain that the Lord is the ultimate sanctioning officer, and we must therefore dedicate our attempts to the mercy of the Lord for ultimate success, or to get rid of the obstacles on the path of success. It is not just dovetailing things in Krishna's service. Prabhupada is writing in the purport. We should know for certain that the Lord is the ultimate sanctioning officer, and we must therefore dedicate our attempts to the mercy of the Lord for ultimate success. Even our attempts, not just the material things, our attempts also should be dedicated for receiving the mercy of the Lord. The missing ingredient, so apart not just the curd, the remedial ingredients is actually, staying in association of devotees, hearing Bhagavatam attentively, submissively, profusely. What are the two words we used last time? Sufficiently and properly and sufficiently. So all these are that secret remedial ingredients which also needs to go. It is not just the idea of trying to dovetail and being, dedicating our attempts to the mercy of the Lord for ultimate success. Ultimately, we need the mercy of the Lord. It's impossible to get rid of all these things. So dedicating our attempts, I'm just trying, oh Lord, please give me the serenity or the intelligence, finer intelligence to remain and accept these things. And give me that mercy. Otherwise, it's just gone. Life is over. That's a good question. Any other question? Jajati?
No, nothing.
Okay. No questions. We will stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.
Right.